What's up? Hello, welcome to human biology. It's exciting to be here. We got a little PowerPoint lecture here to kick things off. Most of my lectures will be hand drawn with like a digital pen, and you'll be taking notes from those. So you will be graded on your notes. So make sure you take a little notes from this PowerPoint, whatever you find interesting. And then we'll get into the hand-drawn stuff in the next couple of little lectures. But we got a fun little set of topics today here. I'm going to introduce myself a little bit, talk about some science. I'm going to teach you a cool thing about rats and how they relate to us. So let's just get into me a little bit here. So I did my PhD at the University of Michigan. This is my graduate school advisor. These are people that were in my lab. This is me. When you get a PhD, it's kind of like you're a wizard when you're done. So I'm a wizard. You can address me as such, or Dr. Professor Tori Arnold, PhD, also works. Or you can feel free to just call me Tori. And some of you, science might not necessarily be your forte, and you might be a little reluctant. So I've done a decent amount of improv comedy in my adult life, and I'm a little reluctant to get out on this stage here. You might be a little reluctant to take this class. So I hope that you have some fun. I hope you learn some interesting things. I hope you question the way that you see the universe. And maybe by the end of it, you'll make peace with biology here. And maybe realize that science is, in fact, for you. Science is a pretty cool thing. We're going to be talking about ourselves all semester, so I might as well keep talking about myself. So in this lecture, we're going to be talking about rats. A little bit more about me, though, is this is where I grew up for most of my young childhood life till I was about 11. This is in a small little suburb of Detroit called Taylor, Michigan. And this was the townhouse that we lived in. There's this huge field back here, and they would mow it. And then over here, this used to be woods, actually. And right here next to the porch, there was a bleeding heart bush that my mother planted. And I mean, look at that thing. That is crazy. That's a flower, and it looks like a perfect heart. And I remember just thinking, what is this thing doing, and why does it exist, and how is such a perfect heart shape coming out of a plant? And I can't even draw a heart. I'm 5 years old. My hearts look all wonkadoodle and cattywampus. What? How is this possible? So I've always loved nature and stuff like that. And there used to be a stream back here in these woods. And we'd go collect tadpoles in there, by the bucketful, and then I'd play with them and investigate them, and then I'd leave them out here in the back, and they'd cook in the sun. And those tadpoles weren't supposed to live anyway. I didn't kill them on purpose, but I feel bad about that. And one of my favorite movies growing up as a kid was The Secret of Nim. And it's about this little rodent family that lived on a farm field, and this back here where they would mow this reminded me kind of that, because they'd come through and mow this with big old riding mowers. And there's a little mouse family, and one of the little mice is sick, and they got to move their house during the plow season because the farmer is going to plow, and they don't know how to do it. And so they seek help from the rats. And the rats in this universe are hyper intelligent. They live inside the rose bush, not the bleeding heart bush, but the rose bush, and they have a whole civilization. They have electricity, and they have government, and technology, and all kinds of crazy stuff. And how did these rats get so smart? Well, scientists started to do experiments on the rats. And they're through their experiments, they're pushing boundaries of science. Science allows us to understand the physical world around us, and just be what is this? What is this thing? And what is it doing? It's an aloe vera, the healing plant. And that's really why I got interested in science. I was what is this thing? What am I made out of, and how does it work? And by understanding that, we can, start to dig in and explore. And whenever you explore something, you find surprises. And these scientists, as they were pushing boundaries, they made these rats super intelligent. They made them so smart that then they escaped. And they went and lived in a rose bush and made their own civilization. And a really interesting thing came out of that. These rats, as they, became more powerful and learned more, this is a quote from the movie, "We can no longer live as rats as we know too much." So as the rats' power increased, so did their sense of duty to others. And this is a contraption that the rats built to move the little mouse's house to save little Timmy. And this is interesting because rats actually contain morality. So if you have a big rat and a small rat and they play together and fight, the big rat will let the small rat win from time to time so that it feels like it's part of the community and it's capable of things and it'll grow and it'll play. So rats contain morality, just like in this fictional world where they contain morality, their sense of duty is increasing to others. And these also taught us, rats have taught me three major things about myself and really about what it's like to be a human. Like when I can look at another animal and I can see those human characteristics, like it's kind of mind-blowing, and rats have three major ones that I'm going to talk about. So one of the things that rats have taught us is that rats are not molded by genetic destiny. So when the structure of DNA and genetic inheritance came out, everybody thought, oh, it's genes and genes. Genes make up who you are. But they don't. There's this other layer, which is the way our environment impacts us. And this little piece of data came into my life in like 2009 or something like that. I was taking genetics and kind of researching this idea of what's called epigenetics. It's above genetics. It's basically changing the way genes are either on or off. A little side note here, I actually, on one of my genetics exams, there was like a big fill in the blank essay kind of thing. I didn't mean to swear there, but I kind of did. And I didn't study on that at all, and I was going to get the question all wrong, but I told the genetics professor about this. Full points. This is crazy, and this really allowed me to begin to kind of understand my upbringing and why I have social anxiety, and I've had to do a lot of work on just general anxiety. So what rats have taught us is that if you have a baby rat in its first 7 days as a rat pup, that changes its response to anxiety for the rest of its life. So if it has a very caring mother who's got a lot of time to lick it, and it gets a lot of licks in those first 7 days, it opens up a gene, and all rats have this gene, but it opens it up so that it can be expressed and on. Then if you make that rat go out in the world and be very relaxed, you make loud noises, you try to scare it, it'll be very relaxed. It's in a safe environment, safe, loving environment, and so then it has a very low anxiety level because it doesn't need that anxiety to survive. Whereas you have a rat in an unloving environment, very few licks from mom in those first 7 days, that rat will have a very high response of anxiety in response to triggers. So for example, a loud noise, the rat will run and go hide. It'll have increased heart rate, become more aware when it has some sort of trigger. And that's because this gene is closed. So the physical licks from the mother open up a gene or close a gene based on how many licks it gets. Isn't that wild? Isn't that wild? I find that to be wild. And it's the first 7 days that kind of dictate that rat's personality based on this change in not the gene, but the openness of the gene from the licks it receives from its mother. What? Crazy. If you ever end up at the University of Michigan, they actually have this on display. This also used to be on the University of Utah's genetics website. the flash animation and stuff has since kind of gone down. But they have an in-person thing where you can lick your rat babies and be a good rat mom or a bad rat mom and see how that affects your babies. It's pretty cool. Okay, the other one is, and we'll see if this audio goes through. I hope it does. Well, we'll see. If not, I'll try to post this video. Rats are ticklish. And not only are they ticklish, I thought ticklish was a human thing. Nothing else had that. That was a human thing. Wrong. Rats have it. And not only are they ticklish, but they can laugh. I thought laughing was a human thing. Wrong. And not only can they laugh or ticklish, but then they're also playful. So they'll come back for more tickles after they're done getting them. Let's go ahead and play this.
The sound a rat makes if you tickle its back.
God, I hope it's recording the audio.
The sound has been converted to a lower frequency that we humans can hear, but the source frequency is mainly 50 kilohertz. Apparently, the rat likes being tickled, not just because of the frequency of its calls, but because when the tickling stops, the rat doesn't turn away, but looks to see where the hand has gone.
Oh, I love his little
Recognize
face.
the researcher's hand as their playmate and approach the hand to be tickled more.
Look at him, he wants more.
Chasing the hand rapidly while vocalizing.
Yeah, where the tickles at, boy. Okay, so rats are really interesting. They would think your hand is essentially another rat. Like it's your play buddy. Very cool. I've had like 10 rats in my life. They are like tiny little dogs, except different because they're ticklish and they laugh. And the way they play is different, and the food that they eat is different, and the way they eat is different. They have little cute hands, and they're amazing creatures. I highly recommend them as pets. They only live about 2 years, so they're in and out. You can go through the grieving process. You can use it as a method for getting through grief quickly and understanding death. I could keep going. I'll shut up though. Okay, last thing. This is not rats, but this is mice. And this is really fascinating. So what researchers did is they stuck microchips that flash a light in these mice's brains. And then we have light sensitive neurons associated with bonding. So like when like a mother's holding the baby, or like two friends are having a good conversation, or you're holding friends with your significant other, or holding hands with your significant other, you're bonding. And certain neurons in your brain are firing then. And so what they did is we've modified those bonding neurons so that we can activate them with light. It's called optogenetics. And on the left here, we have two mice where we're firing their bonding neurons in synchronicity, in the same pattern. That's what these are. And then here we have mice with their bonding neurons firing in different patterns. So do, 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 do versus do, do, do. Bonding neurons are still being fired. They're just firing at different patterns. And what you'll see is that the mice on the left spend way more time hanging out with each other, touching each other, grooming each other, playing with each other. And the mice on the right are kind of doing their own thing. You know, they're not in synchronicity. They're not bonding together. You ever meet somebody and you just hit it off with them just like that? You ever hang out with somebody and you're like on the super same wavelength? It's because your bonding neurons are firing in the same pattern, in the same timing as the other person. Isn't that crazy that somehow, like through empty space, through the air, through our energy fields or something, like our bonding neurons are going together? Pretty crazy. Whereas if you ever hang out with somebody and you're just like, this person is like draining me. They're just sucking my soul. Even though they're a human and I can relate to them on that level, like, I just have a hard time with this person. I can't interact with this person. It's because their neurons just aren't firing in the same pattern. Pretty crazy. These are two of my rats down here. They're both passed away, but this is Peanut. Oh, Peanut. And this is Butter. I love them little boys. Um, you know, rodents have much to teach us, and I hope you learned a little something from this. If you have kids or if you're ever going to have kids, I got a couple, 3 tips for you. Number 1, lick your babies. Get your tongue on those babies. Number 2, tickle those babies. And number 3, insert microchips into you and your baby's brains to synchronize your neural firing patterns to bond quickly with your babies. All right, that's it for the first lecture. I hope you learned something. Gosh, what a baby that is. All right, I'll see you in the next one.